So, question for everybody here. A lot of interesting chat going on. And I don't know why my comments, it never lets me enter anything in the chat. Maybe I'm doing something wrong when I click the link that you guys send me sometimes, but everyone puts in the chat and I want to join in the comments section. With Thiel being very specific on how he feels about Google, and Karp has hinted at what he's felt about Google and those companies that do business with other countries and not justifying why they don't do stuff with the U.S. government. I wonder, with this partnership, is Foundry going to be able to be accessible to other countries that normally they wouldn't sell directly to?
So let me answer that, because I have discussed this thing in past with Palantir, at least verbally, because whenever I have a discussion with them to build some strategic alliances with in different roles, so I asked the same question, how does it work? Okay, so the answer I got, and now this is I'm quoting what I or paraphrasing what I heard from them directly. Okay, their official statement could be different. Is, see, there are few countries, they are very specific, they are not going to work. End of story. Okay, it doesn't mean they cannot. If the clients wants to work or provide services indirectly without coding foundry or technologies within those countries, or there might be a solution for that. But handing over technologies, bringing technologies to these countries are not possible. Okay, I don't think it is a setback in a way. The reason is, if you see what has happened in China, a lot of Silicon Valley companies has actually compromised their positions when going into China, but China still harbored their own valley, their own tech giants. Okay, and the ambition of China is not to harbor these tech giants in China. The idea is to take it outside. We don't talk about Alibaba Cloud or Alipay, but I live in Southeast Asia. Okay, we don't see China as US sees China or India sees China. Okay, if you go to, if I take a walk outside my house, most of the apartments that are being bought in my locality are bought by people in Hong Kong. Okay, so China has a very different. So, for example, and then you see the emerging market, the growth in ASEAN, the growth in India, the growth in Middle East that is coming in. They don't see China, or they are not keeping China as a pariah like US does. Okay, so making a strategic decision not working in these countries to actually capture the other market it's a strategic choice, and in the current scenario it is pain. And one of the reasons they did it, because they wanted to make a very clear distinction that allows them to access some of the most critical defense business. Okay, also, what we have seen in past, that not bringing their technology, you talk to people who actually bring their technologies to China, you actually literally have to submit all the details related to it. If I need to bring a tool for logging, I have to submit a lot of schematics. So IP protection is a key issue. So I don't see that as a concern. There is one thing I do see as a concern, is that they have created an opportunity for them, but they are not capturing it at that well. So the execution for me is a far bigger concern than the opportunity that is presented in the market to them at this time. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Cameron. You use my phone for the comment section.
Or just open up another YouTube tab on.
There you go. There you go.
Need to mention one number. So last year. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sachin. Go ahead.
Okay, last year, Azure growth on year-on-year on public cloud provider adoption rates in their organization and new organization was 60% more than Google, and it was actually little tad higher than AWS. So Google, if they manage to increase 60% of their adoption rate, they will meet Microsoft of last year. So Google and Google is in real spot of bother at this point, as Chris mentioned earlier. that they are missing a lot of growth in the cloud and hyperscaler market at this point. They are not competing with Palantir at this time. Their focus is the Azure and AWS and the existential crisis that comes from them. Back to you guys.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, this is the world I play in working at VMware, so I know all the three big hyperscalers, and Google's definitely not growing as fast. Just find it interesting as far as what version of Foundry is it? Is it the full version? Are they just using the compute to power it? One of the things that I had a great conversation with Coach Strap was, when you get Foundry, it enables you to choose what stuff you would even want in a particular hyperscaler. So if I have stuff already in GCP or Azure and AWS, I can pump, or Snowflake, I could pump those pipelines straight into Foundry, and I can, from there, I would build everything net new in Foundry. So all my metadata would be all there, and there's no need to pay those additional compute costs and cloud computing. So I think that hopefully answers the question I think Cameron was asking, was, yes, they're going to pump that information in, but you're not going to, if you have a choice of, do I want to build this on Google's cloud, or do I want to build this on my own environment, depending on what your compute infrastructure is like and what your budget is, that's going to determine a lot of that. I did think it was really cool that both Google and Palantir made a big deal about this on their website. And on the Palantir website, they're already fleshing out stuff talking about how Google Cloud and Palantir are going to market to solve industry-specific challenges. That's so important, because that is where they've started to make these networking effects. You saw it with Skywise. You're going to see it with, I'm going to butcher it again. Someone was saying on my video, Trafigure. I can't say it.
I think that's
yeah. It's so, yeah. You know what I'm talking about. There you go. And then also with Rubicon for waste management. So you look at all these larger organizations, and Stellantis for auto, EV, etc. If they hit these markets, and when I was talking to Coach Strap, he was talking about how you can have these Foundry archetypes, these frameworks that you have for specific industries. And once you've figured out that framework and what a customer needs and really get it tailored perfectly, then all of a sudden you can just, that breeds networking effects. More contractors will use it, more partners will use it. And you look at all these large organizations that touch many other global companies like Airbus did or does, that can really breed serious network effects, serious contracts. That looks like they have two cases already. They already have two use cases for financial services and retail for Google Cloud. So I think that's encouraging that they're being very strategic about it.
There's one thing I would like to add. I think this is what is not apparent. See, Google has one of the best AI in the market, but if you see the Google AI usage in the B2B and industrial sector, I mean, they don't exist that many. So having a good AI is one thing, but having access to the data to feed to that AI and training is a whole different story. So Google has a piece of puzzle which is better than the rest of the market, but they are not able to deploy at scale. They are very good at using their AI for their internal purposes. Okay, but they have not been successful to commercialize at a level where they want it, because the data in the industry or in the client is not managed as Google is managing their own data. I mean, Google tagline is "We manage world's data." That's how, I mean, so they are managing their data, and access this data to train AI and to deploy a solution is a different thing. But when they are taking this solution to the clients, they see it's a whole different story. And this is why the piece of Palantir is very important for them. Back to you guys.
So one thing that I'm glad you guys didn't talk about, but I have maybe a little bit of insider knowledge, and I don't know if Dom can confirm this or not. But the one thing that I've started to know in the industry is that the on-prem stuff is completely being ignored, and a lot of companies are moving stuff back on-prem because they're like, Why are we paying all this money for this compute when the price of storage has gone down so much, the price of compute has gone down so much, and we can just do a bunch of VMs and provide the same level of services, load all the client apps that we have internally, manage the damn thing ourselves instead of having to get all this extra money that we're just throwing into a dumpster fire, right?
But isn't it easier to just use AWS? Like, isn't that
no?
Well, it depends on the skill sets in your staffing. It's very specific to what you have as an IT group. Yeah. So to Chris's point, what I'm seeing in the industry is critical infrastructure is being brought back from the cloud to on-prem. You need to protect your critical infrastructure. There's so many, I mean, you just don't understand how much cyber warfare goes on every day that we don't see nation state attacks. And so your critical infrastructure is coming back on-prem. You're using things to control with applications, locking those down. And then what you can't afford to be flexible in the cloud, you do. There are others that do have big IT teams and are trying to limit those growth costs that get so exponential. Like, for instance, Lyft. Lyft got so big on their AWS bill that they had to pay a $300 million clause or negotiation to say, hey, we're going to keep growing, but you can't keep exponentially growing our contract at this rate, right? Let's lock this down. And so, and I asked Coach Strap about that. I said, so are you saying once someone really gets their claws into you, like AWS or Azure, that it's really hard to move those apps out of the cloud? Like, I've heard that, but I want to hear it from a developer face to face. And he said, oh, it's hard as hell. And so I was like, okay. So that's when I was like, well, are people going to take their AWS stuff and move it to Foundry? And he said, nope, they're going to just open up a nice little data pipeline, send it in, and everything else from there gets built on Foundry, because Foundry and Palantir in itself is a security first business. Mm-hmm. And so that was just like, okay, yep, that makes sense to me.